Jinwoo pressed his face against the cold metal wall and listened. The corridors outside their room had been quiet for hours now. Behind him, little Sora was crying again, trying to muffle the sound with her hands. Minju sat cross-legged on her narrow bed, staring at the locked door with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. They said we could call home today, Hyunsik muttered from his corner. At 14, he was the oldest of their group, and his voice had started cracking when he got angry. That was 3 days ago. Jinwoo turned away from the wall. The room they shared was nothing like the bright classrooms they had been promised. Gray walls, 4 thin beds, 1 small window that showed only stars, and a door that would not open from the inside. This was supposed to be the Galactic Education Council's best facility. This was supposed to be an honor. Maybe they're just busy, Sora whispered, but even she did not sound like she believed it. When the transport ship from New Seoul had docked at Nexus Station 2 weeks ago, everything had seemed exciting. Jinwoo remembered holding Sora's hand as they walked through the airlock, looking up at the massive station that housed thousands of aliens from dozens of different worlds. The other human children had been split into different groups, sent to different parts of the station for their cultural integration programs. Administrator Vexlar had greeted their group personally. The insect-like alien stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like broken glass. When Vexlar spoke, clicks and buzzes mixed with the translated words that came from the small device around its neck. "Welcome, young humans," Vexlar had said in its strange mechanical voice. "You are here to learn proper behavior for galactic society. You will follow all rules. You will not question authority. You will become better citizens." That should have been their first warning. The trouble started on the 2nd day. During their first behavioral conditioning session, they were told to sit in silence for 2 hours while lights flashed in patterns above their heads. When Minju raised her hand to ask what the lights were for, the alien instructor had made a sharp hissing sound. "Questions are not permitted during conditioning," the instructor had said. Curiosity leads to disruption, but Minju could not help herself. She asked why they could not contact their parents. She asked why their doors locked from the outside. She asked why they were not allowed to explore the station like the alien children were. Each question made the instructors more upset. Jinwoo had tried to protect the younger ones. When they separated Sora from the group for individual assessment, he had stepped in front of the door. "She's just 8 years old. Why does she need individual assessment? Move aside, human child," Vexlar had ordered. "Resistance will be noted in your files, but she's scared. She doesn't understand what's happening. Emotional attachment is a human weakness. It must be corrected." That was when Jinwoo realized they were not students here. They were something else entirely. Hyunsik had figured it out even faster. During their 3rd day, when they were told to line up for memory adjustment therapy, he had refused to move from his bed. "Memory adjustment?" he had asked, his voice loud and clear. "What are you going to do to our memories?" The alien instructors had called for security then. 6 large armored beings had entered their room and surrounded Hyunsik's bed. The lead security officer, a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many arms, had spoken in a voice like grinding stone. "This human shows signs of dangerous independence. Recommend immediate transfer to high-security containment." "No," Jinwoo had said, stepping forward. "We're supposed to be students. Our parents sent us here to learn about other cultures, not to be imprisoned." "Imprisonment is a human concept," Vexlar had replied. "This is correction. This is necessary for galactic peace." They had been moved that night. The new room was smaller with thicker walls and no windows, except for the tiny one that showed only empty space. Their personal belongings had been taken away. Their communication devices had been confiscated. When Sora asked for her stuffed animal, the guards had told her that emotional dependencies were not allowed in their new location. Now they had been in this room for over a week. They were fed twice a day through a slot in the door. Once a day, they were taken to a small exercise area where they could walk in circles for exactly 30 minutes. The rest of the time they sat in their gray room and wondered what their parents thought had happened to them. "They're trying to break us," Minju said quietly. She was only 10, but she understood things that most adults missed. "They don't want us to ask questions anymore. They don't want us to think for ourselves." "Why?" Sora asked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Because they're afraid of us," Hyunsik answered. "They're afraid of humans who think and ask questions and don't just do what they're told." Jinwoo sat down on his bed and looked at his three friends. They were just children. Minju with her endless curiosity, Hyunsik with his stubborn sense of right and wrong, little Sora who missed her parents and wanted to go home. None of them had done anything wrong. None of them deserved this. "My dad will come for us," he said finally. "All our parents will come. They don't know what's happening here, but when they find out—" "What if they don't find out?" Sora whispered. Jinwoo reached over and took her small hand in his. "They will. And when they do, these aliens are going to learn something about humans that they should have known from the beginning." "What's that?" Minju asked. "That you never ever take human children away from their families." Outside their locked door, the station hummed with alien activity. None of the thousands of beings on Nexus Station knew that 4 human children sat in a detention cell, labeled as dangerous subjects requiring containment. None of them knew that these children's families were already starting to worry about the lack of communication from their beloved sons and daughters, and none of them could imagine what would happen when the truth finally came to light. The doors to the Education Council facility burst open with a thunderous crash. Administrator Vexlar looked up from his desk in shock as Captain Donghyun Lee strode into the room, followed by 6 armed human security officers in full combat gear. "Where are they?" Donghyun demanded, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Vexalar's compound eyes reflected the harsh lights as he stood on his 4 insect-like legs. His forearms gestured nervously while his translator device buzzed with mechanical words. "Captain Lee, this is highly irregular. You cannot simply burst into a galactic facility with armed personnel. I asked you a question. Where are the human children?" "The human juveniles are undergoing necessary behavioral modification," Vexlar replied, trying to sound official. "They are being treated according to Galactic Protocol 7 Alpha, which clearly states that dangerous subjects must be contained for the safety of all station residents." Donghyun took a step closer, and Vexalar unconsciously backed away. The human captain was not a large man, but right now he seemed to fill the entire room with barely contained fury. "Dangerous subjects?" Donghyun's voice was deadly quiet. "They're children. The oldest one is 14 years old. Age is irrelevant when dealing with aggressive species," another voice said from behind them. Counselor Threndar entered the room, his tall, thin frame moving with the fluid grace of his reptilian species. His scaled skin was a deep green and his large eyes showed no emotion. "Captain Lee, your emotional outburst proves exactly why these measures are necessary." "Emotional outburst?" Donghyun turned to face the counselor. "You imprisoned human children for asking questions and you call my reaction an emotional outburst?" "The human juveniles displayed concerning levels of independence," Threndar explained in his cold, clinical voice. "They refused to participate in standard behavioral conditioning. They questioned authority figures. They showed excessive emotional attachment to family units. These behaviors are incompatible with galactic society, so you locked them up." "We provided corrective therapy," Vexalar corrected. "For 3 weeks they have been receiving treatment to suppress their dangerous impulses. The neural suppression technology is very advanced. Soon they will be much more suitable for integration into civilized society." Donghyun went very still. "Neural suppression technology. On children. The human brain is remarkably adaptable," Threndar said, missing the warning signs entirely. "With proper conditioning, we can eliminate the aggressive and questioning behaviors that make humans so problematic." One of Donghyun's security officers stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon. "Captain, your orders?" Donghyun held up a hand to stop him, but his eyes never left the 2 alien officials. "Take me to them now." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Vexalar said. "The subjects are in a delicate phase of treatment. Any disruption could undo weeks of progress. I'm not asking." Donghyun's voice carried the authority of a man who had commanded warships and faced down hostile fleets. "I'm telling you, take me to those children immediately, or I will tear this facility apart room by room until I find them myself." Threndar's scaled head tilted slightly. "Captain, I believe you misunderstand the situation. These human juveniles were sent here by their own parents for cultural education. We are simply providing additional services to ensure their successful integration. Their parents sent them here to learn about other cultures, not to be brainwashed in prison cells." "Prison is such an ugly human concept," Vexalar buzzed. "This is a medical facility designed to help problematic individuals become productive members of galactic society." "Show me the medical records." Donghyun demanded. Show me the parental consent forms for this neural suppression treatment. The two aliens exchanged a look. Parental consent is not required under Galactic Protocol 7 Alpha, Threndar said finally. When subjects are classified as dangerous, the Education Council has full authority to take necessary measures. Dangerous? Donghyun's voice rose. A 10-year-old girl who asks too many questions is dangerous? An 8-year-old who misses her parents is dangerous? Human emotional bonds are stronger than those of most species, Threndar explained patiently. This makes human juveniles unpredictable and potentially violent. The attachment behaviors they display could spread to other young beings on the station. So you decided to torture them. We decided to help them, Vexlar corrected. In time, they will thank us for freeing them from their destructive human impulses. That was when Donghyun's famous diplomatic composure finally shattered. Completely. You took children away from their families, he said, his voice carrying through the corridors of the facility. You locked them in cells because they dared to think for themselves. You used neural suppression technology on their developing brains to try to turn them into mindless drones. And you think they'll thank you? His voice echoed off the walls, and throughout the facility, aliens stopped what they were doing to listen. You imprisoned human children because they asked questions? Are you completely mad? Captain Lee, please lower your voice, Threndar said, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Other species are beginning to take notice. Good, Donghyun snarled. Let them notice. Let every being on this station know what you've done. He turned to his security team. Find those children. Check every room, every cell, every corner of this place. And if anyone tries to stop you, arrest them. You have no authority here, Vexlar protested, but his translator was buzzing frantically, and his movements showed clear signs of panic. I have all the authority I need, Donghyun replied. I'm a human protecting human children. That's the oldest law in the universe. As his security team spread out through the facility, Donghyun's communication device buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it and smiled grimly. Ah, he said to the two alien officials. That would be Captain Nayung of the warship Sejong. She's requesting permission to dock, along with the rest of her battle group. Both aliens went very still. You called the military? Threndar asked, his voice higher than before. I called every human ship within 3 light years, Donghyun said calmly. When the word gets out that aliens have been torturing human children, you're going to discover just how many humans care about protecting their young. His communication device buzzed again. Then again. And again. That would be the Aurora, the Busan, the Incheon, and the Gwangju, he said, reading the messages, all requesting immediate docking clearance. All carrying very angry human crews who want to know why their children have been imprisoned and tortured. Vexlar's forearms were shaking now. This is an overreaction. We were following standard galactic protocols. No, Donghyun said, his voice deadly quiet. This is what happens when you forget that humans will do anything to protect their children. Anything at all. From somewhere deep in the facility came the sound of a door being forced open, followed by a young voice crying, Captain! Captain, we're here. They locked us up, but we're okay. Donghyun closed his eyes for a moment, relief flooding through him. Then he opened them and looked at the two aliens with an expression that made them both step backward. You have about 10 minutes before every human on this station finds out what you did, he said. I suggest you start thinking about how you're going to explain this to the Galactic Council. Because when they learn that you tortured children for the crime of being curious, your careers are going to be the least of your problems. Captain Donghyun Lee stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the docking bay of Nexus Station. The massive space hub stretched out before him like a small city, with towers reaching up toward the transparent dome that showed the stars beyond. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors, conducting business, learning, living their lives in the greatest melting pot the galaxy had ever known. Donghyun had been here many times before. As captain of the diplomatic vessel Taeguk, he often came to Nexus Station for trade negotiations and cultural exchanges. The station represented everything good about galactic cooperation. Different species working together, sharing knowledge, building a better future for everyone. Today should have been just another routine visit. Captain, his aide Yoonji said as she walked beside him, her tablet in hand. The Trade Council is expecting us in Conference Room 7 at 1400 hours. The mining rights discussion should take about 3 hours, and then we have dinner with the Altarian delegation. Donghyun nodded, but something felt off. Usually when he arrived at Nexus Station, there would be messages waiting from the human children who were studying here. The kids from various human colonies loved to send reports back to visiting human ships, telling them about their classes and the new alien friends they had made. This time, there had been no messages. "Yoonji," he said as they walked through the main corridor, "have you received any communications from our students here? The children from New Seoul should have finished their second week by now." Yoonji checked her tablet, scrolling through the message logs. "Actually, no, sir. I was expecting to hear from them by now. The New Seoul group usually sends daily reports to their families." They continued walking toward the human diplomatic section of the station. Around them, alien children laughed and played in the open areas while their parents conducted business. Young beings from dozens of worlds ran together through the corridors, their different languages mixing into a happy chaos of sound. But Donghyun did not see any human children. When they reached the human diplomatic office, Donghyun asked the station liaison, a friendly blue-skinned Altarian named Kefri, about the missing reports. "Oh, the human children," Kefri said, her large silver eyes blinking slowly. "I believe they are in extended cultural acclimation. Very intensive program. Very thorough. Extended?" Donghyun asked. "The program was supposed to be 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes longer for certain species to adapt," Kefri replied. "The Education Council knows best." Something cold settled in Donghyun's stomach. In all his years of diplomatic service, he had never heard of a program being extended without parental permission. Human families were very protective of their children, and any changes to educational programs required extensive approval processes. "I'd like to visit them," he said. "Oh, I'm afraid that's not possible during acclimation," Kefri said quickly. "No outside contact is permitted until the process is complete." "No outside contact?" Yoonji repeated, looking up from her tablet. "That's not standard procedure for educational exchanges." Kefri's blue skin seemed to darken slightly. "The Education Council has special protocols for challenging students." After the liaison left, Donghyun turned to Eunji. "Find out everything you can about these special protocols, and get me the communication logs from the New Seoul families. I want to know when they last heard from their children." Yoonji worked quickly, her fingers flying over her tablet as she accessed various databases and communication networks. What she found made both of them increasingly worried. "Sir," she said after an hour of searching, "the families haven't heard from their children in over a week. The last messages were short and seemed strange." "How strange?" "The children usually sent long, excited messages about everything they were learning. But these last messages were very brief. Just, 'We are fine. Learning much. We'll contact soon.'" All 4 children sent almost identical messages. Donghyun frowned. "That doesn't sound like children at all." "It gets worse, sir. I've been trying to access the Education Council's databases to check on the children's status, but I keep running into security barriers. The level of security around their files is much higher than it should be for regular students." "How much higher?" "Sir, the security level is the same as what they use for dangerous criminals." The cold feeling in Donghyun's stomach turned to ice. He had been a diplomat for 15 years, and he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. "Can you get through the security?" Yoonji smiled grimly. "I didn't spend 3 years in intelligence training for nothing. Give me an hour." While Yoonji worked on breaking through the Education Council's security systems, Donghyun made some discreet inquiries around the station. He spoke with other human visitors, alien friends, and station personnel. What he learned made him more worried with each conversation. No one had seen the human children from New Seoul in over a week. The children were supposedly in a restricted area of the station, in what the Education Council called intensive cultural conditioning. When Donghyun asked to speak with someone from the Education Council directly, he was told that Administrator Vexelar was too busy to meet with visiting diplomats. "Captain," Yoonji called softly from her workstation. "I'm in." Donghyun hurried over to look at her screen. What he saw there made his blood run cold. The 4 children, Jinwoo, Minju, Hyunsik, and Sora, were listed in the system under Galactic Protocol 7 Alpha. Their status was marked as detained subjects, enhanced containment required. "Protocol 7 Alpha," Donghyun whispered. That's for containing hostile alien specimens. Or dangerous criminals, Yunji added, her voice tight with anger. Sir, they've classified these children as threats to galactic security. Dongyun read through the files, his hands shaking with rage. The children had been moved to high-security detention after showing dangerous levels of independence and questioning behavior. They were undergoing behavioral modification therapy to suppress their aggressive human tendencies. They're trying to break them, he said, his voice deadly quiet. They're trying to turn these children into obedient robots. What are your orders, sir? Dongyun stood up straight, every inch the military officer he had been before joining the diplomatic corps. Contact the Tiguk immediately. Tell them to patch me through to Earth Command, and get me a direct line to Captain Nayoung on the Sejong. Sir, the Sejong is a warship. If we call in military support, Unji, Dongyun said, turning to face her with eyes like steel. They have imprisoned human children. They have subjected them to psychological torture because those children dared to ask questions and think for themselves. This is no longer a diplomatic matter. He looked back at the screen showing the children's files. Somewhere in this massive station, 4 young humans were sitting in a detention cell, scared and alone, wondering why their parents had not come for them. Send another message, he said. Contact every human ship within 3 light years. Tell them what we found, and tell them that if these aliens think they can break human children and get away with it, they're about to learn how wrong they are. Outside the office windows, Nexus Station continued its peaceful daily routine. Aliens went about their business unaware that they had just crossed a line that humans considered sacred. They had taken children away from their families. They had imprisoned them for the crime of being curious and independent, and now the human response was coming. The news spread through Nexus Station like wildfire. Within an hour of the children's rescue, every being on the station knew what had happened. Human children had been imprisoned and tortured for asking questions. The Education Council had used neural suppression technology on developing minds. Children had been taken from their families and locked away like dangerous criminals. The reaction was immediate and explosive. In the Altarian Quarter, blue-skinned merchants closed their shops and gathered in groups, speaking in hushed, horrified voices. The Altarians were known for their gentle nature and their love of children. The idea of imprisoning young ones for being curious was unthinkable to them. They put children in cages, one elderly Altarian whispered to another, children who only wanted to learn. In the Zephyrian section, the tall, graceful beings who prized knowledge above all else were equally outraged. To them, curiosity was the highest virtue a young mind could possess. The thought of punishing children for asking questions was not just wrong. It was evil. Even the typically unemotional Rigelians, whose crystal-based minds usually remained cold and logical, were expressing something that could only be called disgust. The Rigelian ambassador sent an immediate message to the Galactic Council demanding a full investigation, but nowhere was the reaction stronger than in the human sections of the station. Captain Nayoung of the warship, Sejong, arrived with her battle group just as the rescued children were being taken to the medical bay. When she saw little Sora clinging to a human medic, tears streaming down her pale face, something dangerous flickered in the captain's eyes. How long? She asked Dongyun as they stood outside the medical bay. 3 weeks, he replied grimly. 3 weeks of isolation, psychological conditioning, and neural suppression therapy. Nayoung was silent for a long moment. She was known throughout human space as a calm, professional officer who followed regulations and proper procedures. But right now, she looked like she wanted to burn the entire station to the ground. The other human children? She asked. We found them all. 12 more were in various stages of the program. Some had only been there a few days, others... He paused. Others had been there for months. Months. The Education Council has been doing this for a while. Any human child who showed independence or curiosity was flagged for special treatment. The parents were told their children needed extra time for cultural adaptation. More human ships continued to arrive. The commercial vessel New Busan brought families who had come looking for their missing children. The explorer ship Taekwon brought scientists who wanted to examine the neural suppression technology that had been used. The heavy cruiser Dokdo brought Marines who looked like they were ready for war. Ambassador Taehoon arrived on an emergency transport from the Human Diplomatic Corps. He was a small, quiet man who usually preferred negotiation to confrontation. But when he saw the children in the medical bay, pale, frightened, and showing signs of psychological trauma, his face went white with rage. "Call an emergency session of the Galactic Council," he told his staff.
"Full assembly."
Every species represented. "Sir, it usually takes weeks to arrange a full assembly. Tell them they have 6 hours," Taehun said in a voice like ice. "Tell them that if they don't want this to become a galactic war, they'll make time." The emergency session convened in the massive council chamber at the center of Nexus Station. Representatives from 47 different species filled the circular amphitheater, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the bright lights. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Taehun, looking small and human among the larger alien forms. But when he began to speak, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "Honored representatives," he began, his words being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We are here because a line has been crossed, a line that should never be crossed by any civilized species." He gestured to a large screen that appeared behind him, showing images of the detention facility where the children had been held. 3 weeks ago, human children were imprisoned by the Education Council. They were classified as dangerous subjects. They were subjected to neural suppression technology. They were tortured for the crime of being curious. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Many of the representatives had heard rumors, but seeing the evidence laid out so clearly was shocking. "These children," Taehun continued, his voice growing stronger, "were guilty of asking questions. They wanted to know why they couldn't contact their parents. They wanted to understand the world around them. They showed love for their families. For this they were locked in cells and their minds were violated with technology designed to break their spirits." The Altarian representative stood up, her blue skin flushed with emotion. "The Altarian Republic condemns these actions completely. Children are precious to all species. What was done here is barbaric." The Zephyrian delegate nodded agreement. "Knowledge and curiosity are the foundations of civilization. To punish children for these qualities is to attack the very basis of progress." But Councillor Threndar, representing the Education Council, rose to defend their actions. "Honored representatives, you do not understand the unique dangers posed by human juveniles. Their emotional attachments and questioning behaviors can spread to other species. We were protecting galactic society, protecting society from children." Taehun's voice cut through the chamber like a sword. "From 8-year-old girls who miss their parents? From 10-year-old boys who ask too many questions?" He walked closer to the center of the chamber, and every being present could feel the raw emotion radiating from him. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous?" he asked, his voice now carrying to every corner of the vast space. "It's not our weapons. It's not our technology. It's not our military strength," he paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. "What makes humans truly dangerous is what you awakened when you took our children." The chamber fell silent. "You took our babies," Taehun said, his voice breaking slightly. "Our sons and daughters. You locked them away and tried to break their minds because they dared to think freely. You call us aggressive? You haven't seen anything yet." On the screens around the chamber, live feeds showed the human ships surrounding Nexus Station. More were arriving every hour. Warships, cargo vessels, colony ships. Every human within reach was coming to see what had been done to their children. Every human parent in the galaxy is watching this moment. Taehun continued. They're watching to see how the galactic community responds to the torture of innocent children. They're watching to see if there will be justice, or if they need to take matters into their own hands. The threat was clear. Humanity was unified in a way the galaxy had never seen before. They weren't just angry. They were ready to fight a war over this. "We demand immediate action," Taehun said. "We demand the arrest of everyone involved in this program. We demand reparations for the families, and we demand guarantees that this will never happen again." "And if these demands are not met?" asked the Centaurian representative. Taehun looked directly at him and his smile was cold as space. "Then you'll discover why every parent in the galaxy is willing to die to protect their children. And you'll learn that when you threaten human families, humans stop being diplomatic." The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives frantically contacted their home governments. Outside, more human ships continued to arrive, their weapons powered but not yet targeted. The galaxy was about to learn that there were some lines that should never be crossed, and protecting their young was humanity's most sacred line of all. The children were released immediately, but the damage was already done. As human medical teams worked to help the traumatized young ones, the galaxy watched in horror as the full scope of the scandal became clear. Dr. Seungmin, a human xenopsychologist who had arrived on one of the relief ships, examined the children and presented his findings to the emergency council session. His report sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Minju, he said, his voice heavy with sadness, was one of the brightest children I've ever encountered. She spoke 5 languages and could solve mathematical problems that challenged adult minds. Now she won't speak to any non-human. She has nightmares about alien faces. Her natural curiosity has been replaced by fear. He turned to the next file. Sora, age 8, used to draw pictures of all the different aliens she wanted to meet someday. She dreamed of exploring the galaxy and making friends with beings from other worlds. Now she cries whenever she sees an alien on the news broadcasts. The assembled representatives listened in stunned silence as Dr. Seungmin continued his report. Jinwoo has developed what we call protective rage disorder. He can't sleep because he feels he failed to protect the younger children. At 12 years old, he thinks it's his fault that they were hurt. He started having violent fantasies about what he wants to do to the aliens who imprisoned them. And Hyunsik? Asked the Altarian representative, her voice barely a whisper. Hyunsik won't trust any adult authority figure, human or alien. He's convinced that anyone in a position of power will eventually hurt children if given the chance. He's become suspicious, angry, and isolated. Dr. Seungmin closed his files and looked directly at the council members. These children will recover, but it will take years, and they will never again see the galaxy as a place of wonder and friendship. You didn't just imprison 4 children, you murdered their innocence and their trust. The immediate aftermath was swift and devastating for the galactic community. Within days of the revelation, human colonies throughout the galaxy began closing their borders to non-human visitors. Trade agreements that had taken decades to negotiate were suspended overnight. Human scientists withdrew from joint research projects. Human diplomats recalled their families from alien worlds. The economic impact was catastrophic. Humans had become deeply integrated into galactic trade networks over the past century. Human-made goods were prized throughout known space. Human technology, especially in areas like artificial intelligence and quantum mechanics, was crucial to many alien civilizations. Now it was all gone. The mining operation on Kepler 442b, jointly run by humans and Rigelians, shut down when the human workers left. The massive space construction project at Wolf 359, which employed thousands of humans as engineers and project managers, ground to a halt. The agricultural colonies that supplied food to dozens of alien worlds stopped shipping their products. Stock markets across the galaxy crashed as investors realized that losing human participation meant losing access to some of the most profitable sectors of the galactic economy. But the humans weren't finished. Captain Nayung established a new protocol that sent shockwaves through every alien government. No human child would ever again be alone among aliens without direct human oversight. Any educational or cultural exchange program involving human children would require armed human guards, constant communication access, and the right of immediate withdrawal. "We tried trusting you with our most precious treasures," she announced in a broadcast that reached every corner of human space. "You proved that trust was misplaced. From now on, human children will be protected by human strength." The new protocols were non-negotiable. Any alien government that wanted to trade with humans or maintain diplomatic relations had to accept them. The alternative was complete isolation from humanity. Counselor Threndar and Administrator Vexelar were arrested by galactic authorities, but even that wasn't enough to calm human anger. When the trials began, human prosecutors demanded access to every file, every record, every piece of evidence related to the program. What they found was even worse than anyone had imagined. The neural suppression program had been running for over 5 years. Hundreds of children from dozens of human colonies had been subjected to psychological conditioning. Most had eventually been released to their families, but their parents had been told that any personality changes were normal results of cultural education. Many families now realized that their once curious, independent children had returned home quiet and obedient, not because they had matured, but because their minds had been violated. The galaxy-wide lawsuits began immediately. Ambassador Taehoon addressed the galactic counsel one final time before humanity withdrew from most galactic institutions. You asked us to join your community, he said to the assembled representatives. You promised that our children would be safe in your schools, that our cultures would be respected, that our differences would be celebrated rather than eliminated. He gestured to the files stacked on his desk, hundreds of cases of human children who had been subjected to the conditioning program. Instead, you tried to turn our children into copies of yourselves. You couldn't tolerate the fact that humans think differently, question authority, and form strong emotional bonds with their families. So you decided to fix us. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the translation devices. You wanted to know why humans are different from other species? Taehun asked. It's because we protect our young above all else. Our entire civilization is built around ensuring that the next generation can grow up free and safe. You declared war on that principle. He stood up and gathered his files. Humanity will continue to exist in this galaxy, but on our own terms. Our children will be educated in human schools, protected by human guards and raised with human values. We'll trade with species that prove they can be trusted, but trust will have to be earned now, not assumed. Ambassador Taehun, the Centaurian representative called out as he prepared to leave. What would it take for humanity to fully rejoin the galactic community? Taehun paused at the door and looked back. Prove that you understand what you did wrong, he said simply. Prove that you value curiosity over conformity. Prove that you see diversity as strength, not as a problem to be solved. And prove that you would rather die than harm a child. How can we prove that? Start by changing your own societies. Stop trying to make everyone the same. Encourage your own children to ask questions, to think independently, to form strong bonds with their families. Show us that you've learned the lesson we taught you. What lesson was that? Taehun smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. That there are some things worth fighting for, and that when you threaten what humans hold most dear, we stop being the peaceful, cooperative species you thought you knew. He left the chamber, and with him went humanity's trust in galactic institutions. Years later, trade gradually resumed between humans and some alien species. Cultural exchanges restarted, but under strict human supervision. Some aliens even began adopting human-style educational methods that encouraged rather than suppressed independent thinking in their own children. But the galaxy never forgot the lesson of Nexus Station. The species that had once seen humans as useful but unremarkable partners now understood a fundamental truth about humanity. They would do absolutely anything to protect their children. And in the end, that fierce protective instinct didn't make humans seem dangerous to the galaxy. It made them seem utterly, admirably, terrifyingly human.